Hey guys, and welcome back to Finding Purpose. So last week we talked about how we needed to trust God's plan, trust His provision, and trust His purpose. Today I want to talk a little bit more about His purpose. Before we continue with the video, please like and subscribe. Also, tell your friends and check out Finding Purpose on Instagram. On to the video! Alrighty, Exodus chapter 2, verse 3 through 10 says, "And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maids to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, This is one of the Hebrews' children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew woman, that she may nurse the child for thee? And the Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child, and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, Because I drew him out of the water." So, obviously we were talking about Moses, but here's a question. Why would Moses' mother put Moses in an ark in the river? Well, to understand why she did, we have to look back at Exodus chapter 1, where it tells us about the Israelites living in Egypt and how they were multiplying and their numbers were growing. So the Egyptians, specifically the Pharaoh, was getting a little antsy about that, nervous. So instead of being nice to someone who didn't want to be his enemy, he decided to suppress them. Like, that was a good idea. So he tells them, he decrees that all the male Hebrew children must die. First, he tells the midwives to kill them, which out of the fear of the Lord, they didn't. Then, in the last verse of chapter 1, he decrees that all your male sons must drown in the river, but your daughters may stay alive. Nice time to be a girl. So, we see that Moses' mother was trying to protect Moses. Still, it kind of seems a little weird. Why would Moses' mother put him in the river with no real expected outcome? This is because she did have an expected outcome. We see in verse 7 and 8 here of chapter 2, Then said his sister, talking about Moses' sister, Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew woman, that she may nurse the child for thee? And Pharaoh's daughter said, Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. So Moses' sister is the maid to Pharaoh's daughter. So, in all honesty, Moses' sister probably knew when Pharaoh's daughter would be coming down to the river. She knew that her little brother needed to be there in order for the Pharaoh's daughter to find Moses. So, in reality, they did have an expected outcome. But my point of this story today was that in order for Moses to have fulfilled his purpose, which we all know from the story that Moses helps bring the Israelites out of captivity, a few things had to happen. For one, he had to survive the abortions. Pharaoh's wanting all the male children to be killed, yet somehow, by the grace of God, Moses survived. Number two, Pharaoh's daughter had to actually spare the child. She spared him. She took pity on him. She didn't have to do that. She might have gotten in trouble with her dad, because, her dad, the Pharaoh, had told everyone that the male children of the Hebrews were supposed to die. And yet she's wanting to take this one in and adopt it as her own son. Thirdly, Pharaoh had to allow this, which I imagine being that it was his daughter wanting this child. That probably had a lot of sway in his decision. But again, Pharaoh wanted all these babies killed, yet he let one live in his house, not as a slave, not as a servant, as royalty, as one of his own. So we see the orchestration of God in Moses' life. I'm here to tell you that Moses had purpose. His mother had purpose. God gave Moses to his specific mother for a reason. Moses had to have a big sister that would be a maid to Pharaoh's daughter. It had to be Pharaoh's daughter that found him. It had to be that specific Pharaoh at the time. Everything had to be just so for everything to work out. And you know why it was just so? Because of God. God worked it all out. It reminds me of a verse, Romans 8:28, which says, "And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them who are called according to his purpose." You have purpose. I have purpose. We were made by a just and holy God who has a plan for your life. If you are a mother in a crisis pregnancy situation, your baby has purpose. That was a child made by our holy God, and God has a plan for that child. But you know what? God also has a plan for you, because he picked you out of all people to carry that child. He gave you that child as a gift. The Bible tells us that children are a heritage. Your child has worth from the moment of conception and has purpose.